interdimensional beings, also the non-organic beings. But she has a very, very specific description for these, as if they were characters of a movie. She very well mentions the fact that they are entities, and this place where they are to be seen, basically, is not a place on Earth, is not a place on this dimensional plane, but rather an interdimensional place. This interdimension is also known as the 4D dimension. And in the 4D dimension is a place in which we can reach and see through what they call third eye or first eye, others call it, depends on who speaks. This is the interdimension dimension of dreams. It's a dimension in which we are still partly conscious of our physicality, yet we are experiencing everything in a fashion that left the body, the 3D density behind. This is the dimension in which we can see that there are non-physical beings that can reach us and affect us, our subconscious mind. And when I say our subconscious mind, I don't mean the subconscious mind of an individual. I mean the subconscious mind that is collective. I have a subconscious mind, you have a subconscious mind, everyone has individually a subconscious mind. But since each and every one of us is made of the same matter, just in a different density and arrangement than everything else that exists, not just on the planet, but in the entire universe. And that matter at its core is energy. Okay? It's not odd to think or to know that we're all connected, because there is no actual separation. There is a different arrangement of energy, and that arrangement can become so dense and compact that turns into a physical form of some kind. It can be a human being, it can be an animal, but it can be a tree, it can be whatever we can think of, and it can be a star, and it can be whatever we do not see in the ether. But it's still full of energy. And so thoughts are made like everything else of the same matter. Energy. Okay? And so let's think about this. Let's start with a completely whole first human being, and this is just an example because we have to come to understand how certain things can exist in a universe that is fundamentally neutral. The universe is fundamentally neutral. What transforms and creates things? Is the free will or the intentions. And I want to be very clear here. We can have conscious intentions, and they can be very, very powerful. They can be extremely powerful if we are in complete alignment with ourselves. Being in complete alignment with ourselves, it means literally that our vibration, our frequency, we think of ourselves in terms of energy, is undisturbed. It's completely calibrated to the frequency of love and creation. That's the kind of sound that it's also in the universe, like the sound of the spheres, it's called. We can reproduce that kind of sound when we chant the Om, for example. Chanting the Om helps us recalibrating to that kind of frequency. Okay, that's the frequency of creation. And when we're whole, we resonate with unconditional love. And I repeat, unconditional. It's not the love that we know here in the physical form. Like, I love you because you do lots of things for me, and I feel something like in exchange for you. It's not transactional. Unconditional love is the Christ love, is the Christ compassion, is the creation that can see through every single circumstance and understand, comprehend where everything comes from, which is always the same place, which is always source. What we call God is that. Okay, so let's come back to the thoughts and the free will and the intentions. So we are complex beings, and not just us. When I say we, I don't mean necessarily only human beings. It could also be beings living in other parts of the universe or of the universes. It doesn't matter. But what distinguishes alive beings from, let's say, other densities is that we can feel, okay? And feeling is a combination of emotions and thoughts. So with thoughts, we can influence the extent to which we allow ourselves to feel the emotions. But the emotions are natural. So we can decide with the intellect to suppress an emotion, not to feel it completely, and to cage it in the underworld of ourselves. Whenever we suppress, repress, or reject an aspect of ourselves through judgment, we create something that manifests into energy. And let's internalize this part. Because what happens then is that, as I said, we're all connected through energy. Okay? We're all connected through energy. So, potentially, if I am exposed enough to a certain frequency, meaning, let's say I am sitting in a group and the majority of the people in the group think a certain thought, okay? Unless I am completely whole and I have understood my myself, So I am firm in my thoughts and my feelings. I understand my emotions, how they work, how not to cage them, how to allow them, etc., etc. What happens here? Like, the predominant frequency will eventually affect mine. And I will have to calibrate, which is another word also for coping, for example, if I'm not really willing to, with that predominant frequency. Or let's say that I am in resistance. So I am in pain. Because when we are resisting something, we're not integrating that something, we are in pain. And pain causes a certain number of emotions within an individual. And those are all fear related. Because we recognize a huge spectrum of emotions, and we define these emotions with different words. But this is just for the purpose of communication and definition of experience for us to be able to digest the thing from an intellectual perspective. But in truth, we only have two frequencies. And now we'll come back to this and understand that there is only one frequency for real. All the other frequencies are a distortion of that one frequency. So these two frequencies are love at its highest and fear at its lowest. From fear, we can imagine a funnel, sort of, like that goes up, like an upside down pyramid. And as you proceed up, you have all the other nuances of emotions, okay? They all come from a fundamental state of fear. So when you have someone who's angry, outraged, when you have someone who's sneaky, manipulative, think about it. Like, the only reason why someone would act that way is because they are fundamentally in fear. But if we suppress and repress these emotions and we're like, no, I'm not scared, I'm not afraid, what happens? A part of ourselves, an aspect of ourselves gets bubble up inside of us, and it gets so deep inside in our subconscious mind that we don't even know we have it anymore. How does this then express itself in an individual? Through the body. And this is another chapter for later. And let's keep going up, and we have other emotions such as like when you, for example, like the lowest spectrum of fear, one would think, there must be pure evil. No, there isn't. The lowest spectrum of fear, you can find depression. Depression is a state of complete numbness. Depression is a state of complete abandonment of the self, of complete disconnection from the self. And it's horrible. Depression is when you don't feel anything anymore. It's literally like your mind and your emotions are completely disconnected. There is no coherence inside of you. Okay, so let's stay here. Let's stay in this lower frequency, in the collective subconscious mind. Now let's extend and let's understand that this state of depression, anger, and fear extends to the collective. Another level of the collective, subconscious. Historically, humans, and now we stick with humans, okay, have always tried to communicate with each other. And before the written word, we used to communicate in the ancient times when we were still like prehistorical, sort of, through images. And the prehistorical man is not necessarily less developed than the man we see now. It's just like he's still in the process of developing certain technologies. And the written word is one of these technologies that we've developed throughout time. Okay? But before that time, we used to communicate through images. And so these images would be images that are generally understood by every single one of us without the need for us to explain them. These are called collective archetypes. The collective archetypes. We all have them imprinted in our genetics. We recognize them without the need for anyone to explain to us what they are, because they are part of our nature. And here we come, let's remember that everything is energy. Let's remember that we stem from source, and so we are creators in the first place. Let's remember we do have free will, and we are not supposed to be able to use this free will, because you can only be free when you are aware. And here I bring you an example, if you go to a restaurant but you don't know what's on the menu, you're not free to choose. You're not aware. So what you'll do, you'll trust the waiter, for example. Okay, let's say that the waiter is an evil psychopath, and they will give you, selling that to you as if it was something good for you. They'll give you whatever they want, and you'll accept it. Let's say you go to a restaurant and you're like, I trust you, waiter, but I prefer to know it myself. Then you step, you step forward. You expand to a level of awareness that is higher, and so once you're aware, you can exercise your free will. So your free will will be, okay, on this menu, I know what's on the menu, I know all the ingredients, and I choose based on my intuition in coherence with my knowledge. Attention, because here that is the trick of the free will. It is the coherence between heart and mind in a space of awareness. That's how one exercises the free will. A coherence between heart and mind in a space of awareness of the inner self, which allows you to, through intuition, know practically everything that is going on in the outer world. Because the outer world, as we are creators, only and only is a manifestation. The outer world is a manifestation of what's going on inside of us collectively. So what we're seeing right now in the world is literally a transitional phase. It is a big purge of that fear related emotions that have been bottled up inside of us, suppressed, repressed, and rejected, and locked in the cellar. On a collective level, what we've manifested with this whole, whatever it is, having children locked up in the basements and being abused and suppressed and repressed. This means in the collective that, generally speaking, we reject, suppress, and abuse constantly our own inner children, our own inner children. Why all spiritual teachers teach us that the only way to save the world is actually to save ourselves, and we think, oh, it's such an egoistic statement. Bullshit. This is the most selfless statement, if you understand what it means, because there is a notion in between being selfish and being self-aware. There is a notion between being egoistic and self-love. They're not the same thing, and we misunderstand them as the same thing. This is one of the tricks that is being used by these so-called dark cabal, like invert the meaning of things. Take what's good in the world and imbue it with negativity. So we don't know anymore how to orient ourselves. How do we lose this ability to orient ourselves in the spiritual and physical realm? By disconnecting. And the disconnection happens initially in a subtle way, like, oh, I feel this emotion, but I really don't want to care too much, till we're completely numb. And that happens mostly with trauma of some kind, and trauma is a big topic. But let's come back to the collective being able to project in the external world what's going on inside of us, and therefore manifest in the external world what's going on inside of us. And now let's connect also the other dot, which is that of archetypes. We have archetypes. We all are able to recognize what they mean. So if we see a little baby, armless, beautiful, whatever the baby does is interpreted as sacred, sort of, as acceptable, as cute, because we all, and I don't want to use the word instinctively, although it's part of it, but intuitively know that this is a pure light creature. We want to love it, we want to protect it, we want to nurture it, etc., etc. Men and women, both men and women. When is it that we don't recognize this divinity of the baby? When we're disconnected from our emotions, and one way or another we are in a state of fear of trauma, or both at the same time. When we see a beautiful lady with blonde long hair and blue eyes and fair skin, this is an archetype in our mind. Each and every one of us, first, as they see them, think, she looks like an angel. Have we ever seen an angel? Not really. But we've got plenty of paintings of angels. And funnily enough, everyone in every culture existed have been painting these characters, these fair light beings, in similar ways, even though they never had connection with one another. Why is that? Because we have a collective subconscious imagery. We have a set of images, a set of characters from which we draw when we are designing a character for a movie, for example. You think about the psychology of a character and how this character is gonna look, and you end up with a stereotype that everyone is gonna receive in the same way, because those specific characteristics mean that to everyone. And there are ancient archetypes, like the angel and the baby, for example. These are the most ancient archetypes. Okay, and then there are cultural archetypes that developed in the collective consciousness throughout time. But one of the most ancient archetypes, okay, in the collective consciousness is one that is related to good, that is related to God. And that's why, like, most of the people imagine God as this almighty man floating in the clouds and protecting everybody with his holy hand, the Father. Okay, it's an archetype. It's the fruit of the collective imagery. We all imagine something similar, and we can recognize in that character, in that picture, we can imbue that picture with our idea of the divinity. But at the same time, if that idea of the divinity is presented to us, we intuitively accept it because it is inherent in our imagery or imagery. And this is true also for the evil characters. And now we're coming back to the evil characters. Now we know that we're all energy. Now we know that the fourth dimension is the place in which the subconscious mind is free from the constrictions of the physical, the physicality. And that's why there, with our so-called third eye, or subconscious eye, or first eye, for those who understand what I mean, can see all of our creations, thought forms, which are the consequences, which are like a non-physical yet existing manifestation of the collective, take shape, and the shape we as a collective have decided to attribute to that frequency and energy, take that shape in that dimension, and in that dimension we can see them. What does this really mean? And this also explains why they need our fear to survive. Because we created them. We created them. And this is the most difficult part to digest, because as we created them, we can destroy them. But as long as we idolize something, meaning we project our creation outside, we give it the form that we collectively recognize, and then we say that figure has the power. Okay? This is a manifestation of our collective, subconscious. We give the power to the image because we are afraid of that image inside of us. And I bet we're afraid. It's freaking scary. We made it so. That's an idol. That's a sin in the Bible. To adore an idol, because it means giving your creator power away to something external to you. And this can happen with the figure, with a statue, as we imagine the idol to be, like idol. But it can happen with a Hollywood movie star. It can happen with the government, and we've largely done that. Okay? It can happen with a person. When we are in these dysfunctional relationships in which we idolize completely the others and we completely let go of ourselves and we turn into doormats. Doesn't matter what's the object. Some people do that with objects. Like I've heard of people who fell in love like with the statue of the Eiffel Tower. That's what they're doing. They're projecting their creative power and their love into that one image that they identify as powerful in some way. The only way to defeat the evil ones out there is to understand that they are our brothers and sisters who suffered a undescribable amount of pain and trauma themselves, and they got so numbed that they eventually turned into perpetrators. And what they symbolically do, now that we understand the archetypes, what they symbolically really do when they sacrifice is externalizing in the outside what they are forced to do inside of themselves with their own inner child in order to remain in that cycle, in that place with the illusion of power, because the collective gave up their power, their own power, to those people who correspond to X, Y, and Z characteristics. They are carrying out literally a duty, because the people, subconsciously, of course, they don't know. Nobody knows, and that's why ascending, becoming aware, is so fundamental, because we need to take back our responsibility, our ability to respond to our emotions as they surface. It's that easy, really. But it's not easy at the same time, okay? We've been manipulated by the same very people to which we gave our own creative power to. They took it, they liked it, they became addicted to it, and then they spent their entire existence finding sneaky and manipulative ways to keep it going. And we fell in one trap after the other, after the other, after the other, after the other. But the good news is the evil characters looking like Voldemort, they don't exist. But at the very, very moment they do exist, and all the stuff that I talked about so far is the reason why they exist. So our job is to come back to ourselves, to come back to our hearts, to clear all the traumas inside of us, to become aware of the programming inside of our minds. Write it down, delete it, and rewrite it. Rewrite it into core beliefs that serve us to thrive, to love, to create, and to take our power back and finally away from them. And that's how we slowly starve these entities, these thought forms that we've manifested in the fourth non-physical dimension, yet we've manifested because they are existing somewhere. Even if we repress, suppress, and reject, they don't disappear because they are our emotions. And if we feel an emotion, there's a reason. And our job is to look at that emotion and at ourselves with compassion and love and recalibrate ourselves right away